You're my special friend. Thank you so much for coming back. I love when you come over. And if you aren't here or can't remember when you were here last time, I'm Adam Pears. This is the Pure Naked Truth, a Scam Likely podcast. And now, before we get into the meat of life and autism and all of the things, I'm gonna go get dressed. You can watch me though.
Toucher les astres et les nuages. Entre le gris et le blanc, touche l'espace d'argent. Entre le gris et le blanc, touche l'espace d'argent.
I've been so nervous today when I knew that you were coming over, and I had a plan of like how to share myself and that we can get to know each other a little bit better. And I'm talking about my family, and a lot of times, see, I almost did it where we switched to the third person, and I was just going to address this like cerebrally and talk about brothers generally, but. I know you thought that I was an only child, but then or surprised that I have a brother, and they're just like, I don't know, I just assumed you were an only child. And at first I would took that as a compliment because I felt that it just meant that I'm self-contained or put myself first, which people should do. But anyway, we're talking about my brother. And a lot of times, I'm so nervous because this is probably going to be the only one he watches. I sent him the intro of me getting dressed. He was highly offended. He was, and I was upset at first because I'm like, Andrew, you know that I've like put so much like effort into this, and he was telling me if my kids grew up and decided that they want to do an OnlyFans, I wouldn't like it. I would support them if that's their dream, but it doesn't mean I want to watch the channel. And and then that's really when I was like, okay, fair, that's fine. You do support me, and our relationship is first. I would just if I'm going to talk about the sibling relationships too. I think that they see. I'm balking every time I go to swing, and then I'd like stop myself because I'm nervous, but. And I also like, I'm so worried about crying. I don't know why I'm scared of crying during this, but if I were to rate my brother, I'd rate my brother an A. I have an A brother rating. I would give myself maybe a B minus. I'm more of a B minus, and I know that. I know that I'm better than I was, but I understand that, and I think with the sibling relationship, especially with mine, he's the only person in my life that I felt like unconditional love from, and that I didn't have to perform. It wasn't conditional on grades or anything else. And sometimes you take that for granted. And I think it's easy because, especially as an older sibling, because my life was in progress before he joined, so we were a band of three, and then Andrew came along 3 years later, and and that's always been, I think, the dynamic personally. And a lot of times I think about like birth order and how that affects things, and it wasn't until very recently that I really understood him, and it hurt. I think it hurt because although I was a child, and the responsibility or the onus to include him in our family or make sure that his needs were taken care of wasn't mine. The responsibility wasn't mine, but I have to come to terms with the effects that my autism and the way that I am affected our family, and that's hard. When people ask me, or they'll send me things about in the news or Netflix when it comes to like the betrayal of people with autism or on the spectrum, and it is so painful. It is so painful for me to watch. Atypical, I couldn't get through. Couldn't get through the episodes. The struggles that he was having were so clear or were so familiar to me, and so first there's that wince that I would feel because it's like, oh, I wasn't that bad. You know, I was able to like mask it enough that I wasn't weird. But what is so heartbreaking is the effects when I see the strain that he puts on everyone else in the family, and that is something that is so hard for me to see because I understand that that must have been the case, and that's difficult. Um, it's difficult, and I think that that's one of the things. When my mom died, or with the last conversation we had, I asked her if she had any regrets, and she said one, but she said I should have held you back a few years in school, that you weren't ready, and I pushed, because in my house, being like young and grades above was the goal, you know, and in that, yes, you wouldn't be penalized if you got some, if I didn't get A's, but because of my testing, it was a catch 22. They would say like, well, we know that you're smart, and so if you aren't, then it's a moral failing. If you weren't paying attention, it's because you're not trying. And so all of these resources, time and energy, like went into to pushing me forward, and I think as I've gotten older and had time to reflect, you don't have the same parents. The parents that I had, uh, are completely different than the ones my brother had, even though they were 3 years apart. And the only reason I can kind of say that, okay, I wasn't just terrible as a brother is because my brother decided when he had his own family planning, he intentionally planned his children 3 years apart because my brother and I are 3 years apart. And that meant a lot to me because, there was a lot that he could hold against me, and he hasn't. Anyway, so we'll it's this whole episode. It's We're gonna go up and down. We're gonna talk about things, so it's not gonna be all heavy. But I just wanted to. I had to like at least get that out a little bit. So, a couple things about my brother. He holds the record, the state record in Washington for deadlifts. So this guy can deadlift 600 pounds. He's a father to three kids, a stepkid and two children, and is the best dad. That he, that's what brings him joy in life, is being a father and being there for his family. He's always been my protector, even though he's 3 years younger, even when I didn't know that he was. And in the dynamic was funny because even though I got most of the attention in the house for good and bad, I was always deeply jealous of Andrew. Deeply jealous. I was jealous that he things seemed to come so much easier to him, than it did for me. I was jealous that he was so giving naturally, that his favorite, pizza was pineapple because he knew that I liked pineapple, and that if we were had to split the pizza half and half, that he would intentionally order something that I liked, knowing that it was. And I wasn't really grateful for it. Like I was just like, that's obvious that pineapple is the best flavor. So I'm glad that you came to your senses. That was always like my kind of view towards this growing up. Andrew was fearless, and we would go into adventures together, like building forts, snow forts. In Wichita, my parents built, this like large house, out in the country, and it was just me, Andrew, the only other black person I knew was my brother, and Julie, our dog, and we would be wrestling and going on adventures. I would make him do a lot of gay things, growing up. So while we would go to build our house, we would interact, or we would role play soap operas in the Star Lumber. So we would at the Star Lumber store. So we would go in where the kitchens and the bathtubs, and usually the jacuzzis, and I would pretend that I was making out with somebody's husband, and he was just like, "Why are you making out with the husband?" I was like, "Because I'm Erica Kane," like from the character from All My Children, and he would say like, "Okay." I was always Catwoman. He was always Batman. We were like so close growing up, but there was a jealousy there that when I knew that I was getting a brother, I was upset because I was like, "You won't have time for me," and it was always the feeling that resources were finite with time. I knew that money was something that wasn't unlimited from a very early age, and I felt that kind of love was too, and I don't think I've ever said that out loud, but but I kind of knew that. And so when he joined, I think it was always a fear. And when I saw the attention being paid to him, that it was like hard for me to or I looked up to him. I looked up to him that I wished that I could be as selfless when I knew that I was selfish, and I knew that that was a bad thing, but it was also a hard thing to. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Uh, let me. I'm going to jump to. I'm going to go fast forward to stories. So okay, so let's like fast forward to one of the big like memories that I have. So here's an example. So I can just tell you, but I'll show you like that. This is this is how I was. So when I was 10 years old, my dad had a heart attack. He was running after a bus or doing something in San Antonio and collapsed on the street and had a heart attack. And then they called in. He wasn't living with us at the time. He wasn't. He would take contract jobs around the country that paid more, and then we stayed in Kansas. Anyway, so he collapsed, had a heart attack, and then called the house. My mom brings us into our bedroom. My brother and I shared beds for a while until I was 13, and he was so upset when I left. He was so upset when I moved out. Like held it against me for years, years. He was like, "How could you do this to me?" Question mark. So anyway, so my mom comes into the room and sits us down and just said, "Your dad had a heart attack and collapsed on the street. He's been taken to the hospital." And then she pauses and asks if there are questions. And my brother's crying immediately. I was shocked. I was shocked and trying to take it in. And then my first question was, "Are we going to be poor?" And then my mom got so upset and she was just like, "I just told you that your father is dying on the side of the street and you're asking if you're going to if we're going to be poor. Like what is wrong with you?" It just I think instantly in my mind I was just thinking about all of those stories that you see like Oliver Twist or Charlie's like no good lazy grandpa that had some sort of illness and he was just like laying in the bed with all those old people and Charlie had to go out into the streets and work for his money. That these were the first things that I thought of. And growing up, all the stories that we listened to were always very dark, like Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations. The idea that there were fortunes that could be won and lost were and the implications of losing a parent were clear, and it was hard for me not to think of that in the moment. And I was right. I was right, but that wasn't the time for it. So this was the these moments where I would just be this way. Andrew would be giving a response that would be more acceptable, and then I would hear my mom when we were supposed to be in sleep asleep with my brother, and someone came over to help my mom and she was like crying and then she stopped crying because can you believe that Adam asked are we going to be poor as the first response when I told him his father had a heart attack on the street. It wasn't that I didn't care, but it's again it was like also these are kind of the dynamics that were there and I like wish that they weren't, but I like envied Andrew, that he seemed to just naturally have these impulses that people wanted to see and as opposed to mine which I thought were much more practical, because crying wasn't going to do anything for my dad, and if I can't cry about all of the little things that I feel like I should be crying about, then don't make me cry when I don't feel like it. Anyway, so this started like an adventure with my brother, and one of the true times that the first time that I was so grateful that I had a brother, that he and I had a relationship that can't be replicated, and so anyway, so my mom went down to go like check on my dad, and my brother and I were going to fly for the first time on our own, and to like later to go see him in the hospital. Ugh, oh gosh. But we would always like make games, just all the time, based on the soap operas that we weren't supposed to be watching but did watch, Matlock, Jessica Fletcher, Magnum PI, and so we would play games around the hospital, stealing wheelchairs and racing up and down. We would get in trouble, and then my brother would take the blame. We would usually end up getting hurt, and I would end up hurting him, and then I would pretend that I was hurt and then make it about me so he wouldn't tell. So many times I've said that there was nobody in my life at the time, where I didn't have anybody, and I know that it's gonna be hard for him to hear that, because he was there, and even when I didn't realize that he was. And I think that that's something like beautiful about relationships with siblings, that at some point you're no longer like just siblings, that you're a people or adults in this world going through things, and you're able to share. If you're lucky, you're able to share with them in a real way that you would a friend. And we've had two conversations in my life that have really like changed how I thought about things. The first one, oh, it's gonna be tough. So when I got out of the hospital, Andrew and I never talked about why I was in the hospital or what happened. I just showed up. I showed back up in Virginia, and I knew that he knew that I wasn't going back to school for a little bit, and that was it. And we just didn't talk about it. Just kind of we didn't talk about me being gay either. Like that wasn't something that we did, and it wasn't until like years after high school I found out, because people were asking like, "Well, were people give you a hard time?" And I said, "No, nobody even asked." Found out though, my brother was in middle school. Somebody said something about me on the bus. So, all right, I have to like paint the picture honestly, because sometimes with in this podcast, I walk away and I feel like the lamb, and I think of myself as the lamb. But in a lot of these situations, I'm not the innocent party. And I have to admit that. So Andrew would wake up early, an hour early, so he could walk several blocks, several a neighborhood away, and catch the bus in a different part. This is in high school in New Jersey, so we wouldn't get on the bus together. Uh, he would set his alarm early just so he could not be, at the bus stop with me. I was always late going to the bus, so I would be running. I would have my shoes that I wore to the bus because I was running there, and then I would change shoes on the bus. And at this time, Skechers, like the ones that look like bowling shoes, I had like 20 pairs in like every color, and I would keep them pristine. So I would run to the bus, but I'd be late. But I knew that they would wrap around. So what I would do is cut across the street, and this is like a highway, with a air horn, and stop the bus. So and stop the bus so it would stop for me when it came back around. So I would miss it and come back around. It would be a production, and then I would get on the bus, and my brother would already be on the bus. Anyway, so somebody was talking about me being gay, and Andrew beat them up. And this kid was a senior. Andrew was in seventh grade. He's always been kind of like Mighty Mouse, and then nobody ever said anything. So I was out being a very flaming, swooshing around with my mink coats, and nobody asked or said a word. Anyway, one example. So where were we? I'm trying to remember where we were in time. Um, oh, okay. So the two conversations that we had that shifted my perspective on everything. One, he was cleaning out things. Andrew's extremely sentimental, and I think that this is something also with younger brothers. It's the same with my friend Ryan too. The one, they follow rules because they don't realize that rules are just made up. The oldest child knows that there weren't rules before, that those rules were in place to do something, and rules are just things people say to make you do things. It's there. It's not. Uh, I was gonna say biblical truth, but that's not even. Those rules don't exist either. So, like, these aren't rules of gravity or nature. And but he's always been very on time and very about rules and decorum, and how people should be. And I, on the other hand, wasn't. So anyway, so there was this chest of things. When my mom died, my stepdad took everything. That's a whole nother story. But there was this one chest of things, and he went through it, and there was a letter in there from when I was in Rogers Memorial with the eating disorder rehab. I had to like write a letter to my eating disorder, and he read it. And there was a little part in there. There was a little part that I said about when I gained weight, so after I stopped soccer practice, after I stopped playing soccer, I put on a ton of weight because I was a fat kid, and he made fun of me one time, and he didn't make fun of me all like usually, and again I made fun of him as well, but he was talking about me breaking a tree branch and how I was upset and told my mom, and then my mom told him stop, but then also said, if you don't want to be fun for being pudgy, then or don't if you don't want to be made fun of for being pudgy, then stop being pudgy. And so that was kind of the beginning of okay, I'm going to change. And before that, food had always been an issue already, just from like texture and temperature. That I was always an extremely picky eater. Now, with like in the context of autism, you know, there's RFID, and that's a whole thing. But it was the '90s before, and that's not what people were doing. Anyway, so he read this and felt so guilty, and I told him I didn't hold it against him. But he also was brought up that he knew why I was in the hospital. That my stepdad had told him as soon as it happened, and how angry he was at me. That uh, how angry he was that I was going to leave him with, and he was like, I couldn't imagine how you would do that to me, and I don't know what I would do if I lost you. And that was a, you know, I don't feel guilty anymore. But it was tough. It was tough to take that in and realize the magnitude that I could hurt him. And and he's always like tried to take care of me, and even when there was no one taking care of him. So in high school, so my brother knew about like the eating like long before everybody else, my eating disorder, and and knew that something was wrong, but he was also having, you know, his issues, and there was a lot going on in our house. But when and so everybody found out because I was shooting this MTV show. I won't tell you. That's a story for another day. But I was shooting this MTV show made, and had stuff happened on camera. Uh, they were no longer wanted to shoot anymore, and then were told my parents about my eating disorder. And so that's a whole nother story for another day. But so every that was now like a topic and aware of, but then everyone was still like busy doing other things. So Andrew would be the one that would try to help and make sure that I was eating or like, taking care of myself, and would make me a sandwich and order things that he knew that I liked to like try to take care of me when I was being an absolute mess. And and was consistently there. But I usually would ignore his phone calls because it's always like, oh, Andrew, you know, he's fine. He'll always be there. But that's, I think, also a big difference between family and the friends that you make that become family. I know that I'm a much better friend than I am a brother. And it was funny because the other week I treated Ryan kind of like I would my brother, that I was upset that something had happened. I can't remember. I can't even remember what had happened. Oh, I no, I broke my bones. So I was in a bike accident, and I was upset that he hadn't come over for a week, and I had told him that I, you know, had wanted him to, but he didn't, and then he was saying he was just extreme. It was an extremely busy week for him, and he's like, I checked in on you like all throughout the day, and you know, and did these things, but I like could not be there, and and that I think that you're also being like unreasonable. And instead of asking, you were trying to guilt me into it. And I didn't appreciate that. And then I realized like, oh, I was treating him more like a brother than I would a friend, and realizing that that sometimes it's not about you. Okay, so that was the one conversation was about me getting out of the hospital. Second was last year, and it started when someone had told me like, well, you had a bad childhood, and I was taken aback by that because I was like, well, don't put that on me, like because I had never described my childhood as bad, and I thought of it really through rose-colored glasses, like after once you get through it and you've worked through things, it's just like, oh, that's just like something that happened. Dad had a heart attack and blah blah blah. People were crying. It was drama, but you move on. And then I was thinking about it, and I was just like, I wonder if Andrew thought that he had a bad childhood. And I brought this up to him, and he let me have it. He let me have it, and it was it was upsetting. It was upsetting, and I wanted to say that it wasn't true. And that now that then I could see and understand when people tell story or share their experience growing up, how there's an impulse to negate it and to say that it wasn't like that, because sitting with the idea of somebody that you care about so much could have been put through something like that is unbearable. It's unbearable. And he came out the gate strong, because that's Andrew. Andrew is crunchy, sometimes in the delivery, but soft in the middle. And it's kind of the opposite, that I have the softer veneer, and then people work inward and see that it's a little cooler. The temperature's a little cooler on the inside. But Andrew's a softie and gives in just about every time. If you're somebody that he cares about, he goes hard and he never forgets and holds grudges. Anyway, so he said, I don't have any emotional connection to our family, Norman parent, Norman or Griselda, and that's what he said. I have no emotional attachment to Norman or Griselda, and when I started, I was shocked by that. It's like if you thought you were in a band. I thought we were of a band of four. And then one of the band members says, I was just your roommate. I was never in your band. That was how he felt. He said, I had felt alone my entire life. That everybody was too busy for me. And I knew that I had to be okay, because no one had time for me not to be okay. And it hurt. It hurt hearing that. And it made more sense why Andrew has created this life, from his new life, current life, from nothing, and is doing well. Taught himself Spanish. I was president of the Spanish Language Society. Can't speak a word of Spanish. He's fluent. Like runs commercial construction jobs. Has a wonderful family, and has built. But he shares nothing about where he's from or his family or times before. He just kind of popped up like an alien, and just people had to accept that was it. And that gave me more of an idea why that you do not have the same parent that your sibling had. And when it was hard to think of it that way. But by the time Andrew came around, my dad had said that he knew that his marriage was a mistake to my mother, that it was already going towards divorce, and by the time Andrew was born. And this about a little bit after Andrew was born, my mom, that was the first time that the scleroderma, which is an autoimmune disease, it's kind of like lupus, first hit. And my mom thought that she was going to die. Then Andrew was very young, maybe around 2 or 3, and that was when they were building the house. So one of the reasons why our house was so large in Kansas was my dad was designing for the possibility that my mom may be wheelchair bound or something like that. So he felt so alone his entire life, and that he had to figure things out for himself. I had to step outside of what I felt I knew about my family and that experience, and accept that that was his reality. And I knew that it was true. Everyone was too busy. That there was no time for him. And then in the context, not having the context of autism, it makes it harder for everybody else, not just me. That people don't get credit, or there's no acknowledgement that what they're experiencing is maybe something extraordinary, as opposed to the resources that are put towards these things for me are the same as Andrew's dental stuff. If they're looked at the same and treated the same way, I understand not trying. Well, you don't want to stigmatize one child, but there's also, I think it would help as a family to acknowledge that you all are going through something together, and like, just pretending that it's not there. It's not a one to one comparison, but if you had someone who had alcoholism or some other uh, medical thing that impacts the family, pretending that it isn't there is a disservice to everybody that's who's living through it and surviving it. And so that was really tough. But I needed to hear it because he made so much more sense to me. Before I would look at his life and his choices, and I always think that I'm very empathetic. I think of myself as an empathetic person, but I can only think of what I would do in that scenario or situation, and I couldn't understand some of the some of who he was, because I just didn't see. I wasn't able to see him, because, like I'm telling you about my family, I didn't know his family. I didn't understand his experience through all of these things and how it felt and he brought it up, like he doesn't hold it against me, but he was in high school. So he was in high school. His brother tried to commit suicide when he went to school. His brother was passing out and making, all of these mistakes, while also, not being as attentive or kind, as I could have been. And I want to be clear about that. I don't feel guilty. Uh, I know I didn't mean to say that in like a catty way, but that's part of life. You and the cost of admission of entry to having a balanced and well lived life is making mistakes and understanding them and understanding your role in them, and that I may not be responsible for the decisions that my parents made as a family, but I have to acknowledge the role that I played in Andrew's negative experience growing up. Oh, this was so much. I wanted to laugh. I wanted, because there's so many things. My brother's hilarious. And there's so many like funny stories and I wanted to tell a funny story, but I don't know if I think I might have to save that for another day and just let sit with sit with this. Like, some things can be sad. So this one, it's it's sad, but it's happy. But we have such a beautiful relationship today, and I think that's, if there's any takeaway from this, if you have a sibling that is half decent, like, yes, there are plenty of garbage people out there, but if you have a sibling that is half decent, and maybe you weren't always close or you weren't close at all, that it's worth picking that up, that relationship, and dusting it off to see if it's worth something, because you never know. Like, they're people, brothers are people. Like, you have to remind yourself of that. I have to remind myself of that, and people are allowed to grow and mature, and if I hadn't, I would have missed out on a beautiful relationship that we have now, that I can talk to him about anything. And he was really there for me when I went through this terrible breakup, 3 years ago, and it was the first time that I really had shared about anything that was going on, with me romantically. I just didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. He would know sometimes when I was like snuck a man into the house. That's another story. But anyway, so if you have a brother, tell them that you love them, and sometimes you have to remind yourself that you do. That love isn't just what you feel. I feel like the love that I can easily access for my parents or other people in my life, it feels more intense because there's so much there's less certainty, it feels like it's something that may leave at any moment. And I think we need to, I say we, but I need to keep that in mind, that love that is strong and reliable may not seem as exciting as the one uh, that you're scared of losing all the time. and that being scared of losing somebody shouldn't be a default. You shouldn't be scared that anybody that you're with is not going to be with you for superficial reasons, or any reason, at all. And so I'm grateful for my brother, and I don't say that enough or ever, uh, or ever. I don't want to. I don't. I can't sugarcoat things. It was funny because I told him about the show, High Potential. Great show on ABC, but it's about this woman who wears inappropriate clothes. She's extremely smart, single mother, starts as a janitor, and then starts solving crimes. It's like Monk. It's like if Monk were played by a sexy single mom that was kind of a mess. And I introduced it to my brother because I was like, I kind of see myself in here. And then I was out of the room. He was showing it to his wife, and he goes, "This is how Adam is when he's not on his best behavior, like he is when he comes over." Because Andrew like tells everybody's scared of me, and but I come in and I try to be super sweet, and he's like, "No, it's this is how he is. He's like insulting people by accident, bossing people around, and inserting himself while wearing something ridiculous." And so when I go to visit him, he's always like, "Please don't wear those pants." And I'm just like, "What pants? What do you mean, Andrew? Like I can't be anybody else." Yeah, he's there and has me 10 toes down all the time, and is such a fierce advocate for gay people or for like protectors. When he was telling me about the video that he saw of somebody being accosted, and he gets so mad. He was like angry when he's telling me, and he's like, "I would beat them up if that happened, or if I saw that out in the street. I don't tolerate that." And I'm like, "Thank you, Andrew." Anyway, if you have a brother, tell him you love him, and try not to be like an asshole. And I know that it happens sometimes, but you can do better. I'm sorry, just on birth order, I had to, just so I know like my grading. I asked like the friends that I have that are the oldest sibling, and said, "You know how you feel about your brother? That it's hard to remember that they exist because life was in progress before you had them. So you remember the life before. And so it's always an add on." And they looked at me and they're like, "No, that's not how we feel." And I was like, oh, hmm, maybe this is why the only child thing. And then that just like hurts because I'm like, "Oh, I need to work on being better with that." Because I have a chance with my niece and nephew, and I want to be there. I will be there for them and my brother. And anyway, so it's not about the mistakes of the past. It's about looking forward to the future and being excited and ready for that. We're going to take a break. And when I come back, I'm going to show you my pair necessities. This is the part of the show where I give you my favorite things that I can't live without. Welcome back. And this is one of my favorite parts of the show. And this is the pair necessities. So, the way that you support the show, a couple ways. One, reviews. Reviews are so important. And two, scamlikely.com. Scamlikely.com is where you have my curated necessities for life. This is beauty, sleep, sheets, just everything. The things that my autism has helped me curate and go through the A and B trials for everything. And anyway, so that's how you support the show. Today, we're talking about my protein drinks. I had conflicting feelings talking about this. So, in honor of my brother, because he's a bodybuilder, that getting your protein in is so important. And I'll also tell you like why I'm conflicted, because as I've told you, I've had disordered eating for a very long time, and I wanted to originally, when I started the show, I was going to do a cooking show, and it would be me cooking and preparing meals because I wanted to put forward this vision of pure recovery and like, oh, look at me, like I made it. And when I was recording one time, I was telling someone about the time. I was like, well, there was a time in my life that I was living off of gummy bears and protein drinks. And then they paused and they said, "That is all we've hung out all day and I haven't seen you eat anything else other than that." And I was like, oh God. So I'm just going to, this is my truth. And I've tried so many different proteins, like all of them. Any of them that you've seen, I've tried it and I have pushed it to the max. And when I tell you the lean body, one, it tastes amazing. I use it as a creamer in my coffee. I can drink 6 of them a day, and it's not giving me any sort of like GI problems. The protein to fat ratio is amazing on this one, and it comes in all sorts of amazing flavors. I get it on Amazon. I again drink like 6 of these a day, and it's a wonderful way of keeping the lean mass up on your body, and and throw it in a bag, take it to the gym, buy it in bulk online, and don't buy it from the store. When you're in the store, it could be like $8. I was at a bodega the other day. I had to go back, and I never do this because my dad was always like weird about prices, and I think it's so embarrassing. But I looked, and it was $21, and I had only gotten 2 things, and I went back, and I was just like, I'm sorry, like how much was that? And it was like $9.89 for a single one. That's outrageous. So this is one. It's one. It's economical. Two, it gives you the protein that your body can absorb and use quickly, and it tastes delicious, and you'll drink it like water, and it's great. And if you do want to live like me, then at least it won't give you bathroom issues. Everybody needs protein in their life. Get one of these, and you don't have to have pina colada. And I know that people are at home like, ooh, I don't like pina colada. One, try it because it drinks amazingly, and you can mix it with all sorts of things, but it comes in all sorts of flavors. They'll always be there. Anyway, that's enough about this. And drink your protein. Pick one of these up at scamlikely.com, and I'm going to come back and say goodbye. Thank you so much for hanging out. I know you came. I hopefully you had fun. I think I enjoyed myself, and sometimes there are tears when you come over and to hang out and talk about life. But life is tear. Some there's a mix of emotions there, and this is the truth. You wanted the truth, I'm telling you the truth. And anyway, thank you so much. It means the world to me. You're my special friend, and again, as a friend, please leave reviews. Please, good ones. 5 stars. 5 stars. Uh, 5-star review. Please leave one. Like, subscribe. It means so much to me, and it really helps the show because this, again, you other people are in studios. You are in my home, and I made this for you. I made this just for you to come over. So, like, subscribe, leave a review. I'm Adam Pears. You're my special friend. Thank you so much. This is the Bare Naked Truth, a Scam Likely podcast, and I can't wait for you to come over again. See ya.